But if we don't get out by 6, Tom will be departing for a personal obligation with his family. So if we keep it moving along, Tom can tell us if the minutes are good, or we could do the minutes first, Tom. You want to do the minutes first? Do it out of order?
Fine with me. I assume everybody had a chance to sift through them with the ultra-fine.
I move that they be accepted as written.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as written?
Aye.
Second, thank you. All right, we'll now come back to our regular agenda. We are welcoming Josh Wrigley to the meeting. You have to come up to the podium, Josh. Josh is the town's resiliency coordinator. I met briefly with him, told him that at least one of our committee members was interested in learning more about the Oyster Pond project, plus get to know you a little bit, and then to the extent that we have to work with you or for you or whatever, we can do that. We are an advisory board for the selectmen. We don't set policy, but we recommend policy.
Great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As was just stated, my name is Josh Wrigley. I'm Falmouth's new coastal resilience specialist. And at the request of the chairman, I'm before you this afternoon just to talk a little bit about the Oyster Pond restoration project that's going right now off of West Falmouth Harbor. So what I'll do is just give a very brief overview of the project, and then if anyone has any questions about it, I can field those then for you. So the Oyster Pond restoration is a project that's been a collaborative effort between the town of Falmouth, NRCS, Cape Cod Conservation District, and APCC. Over the last number of years, it's received its funding from a couple different sources. And at this current time, APCC is working off of a NOAA Transformational Habitat grant that is funding the project through the permitting stage. And right now, engineering consultant Fuss & O'Neill has developed plans for the new culvert that should take it up through permitting. After that, they're going to be seeking more funds for construction and also further design of the restoration portion of the project that would take place in upstream sections of Oyster Pond in about 3 acres of salt marsh that lie at the northern end of the pond there. But the main goal of the project, though, is to restore an undersized culvert that acts as a tidal restriction. Right now, the culvert is 3.8 feet in diameter, and what is proposed is a 5-foot by 6-foot box culvert with natural substrate bottom. And what that will do is improve the tidal flow in that area, introduce greater salinity to upstream portions of Oyster Pond that have seen water quality deteriorate in the last number of years, and this should serve to help combat the spread of Phragmites, the invasive reed, as well as help restore salt marsh habitat and also finfish and shellfish habitat as well due to the water quality. APCC has conducted quite a bit of work up to now, establishing some baseline figures in the Harbor Head area and in Oyster Pond itself, measuring dissolved oxygen, salinity, water levels, and all of that data is now being used as they get towards the permitting process, which will need to go through several stages at the local, state, and federal levels. So I think I'll leave it right there, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Josh, are there any projections as to what the tidal amplitude will be upstream of the culvert on the land side?
It'll vary. It'll improve the flood storage capacity of that inland side of the bike path there. But depending on sea level rise effects and then also storm surges on top of that, it could vary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something they're kind of looking at right now, which is the extent to which heightened water levels may affect some portions of the coastal bank that lines the pond.
So we have a project to put PRBs in at what's called Snug Harbor. That's where relatively close to the grant being finalized, correct, Kristen?
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, no, we put all of our stuff in, and they've indicated, they've given a favorable. So I think we'll be interested as you move along, what you go through to permit work on the bike path, since we're gonna have to decide whether we're using the bike path or the roadway
Yep,
in that area.
right.
And I think you touched upon the tidal thing, I guess. How are you gonna measure the success of like restoring different biological populations in the oyster pond?
Well, the APCC is going to be looking at that through the baseline data that they've collected already, and I think what they'll be, really kind of focusing on is the health of high marsh vegetation. If they see some native species that are, well suited to that habitat, begin to come back as you get more tidal flushing, and as they kind of flesh out the restoration portion of their project. They're looking to use runneling in select instances to try and drain a couple of portions where there has been dieback to encourage more vegetative growth in those areas, while also preserving some that have populations of Rupium meridima, which is a plant somewhat similar to eelgrass, but that provides forage for some migratory birds throughout the season. So they'll be looking at biodiversity and water quality and several other factors as well, and sort of gauging the continued success there of the project.
Steve?
There's a very clear report, and you made it clear that it's the oyster pond in West Falmouth. But I want to make sure
That's
the
correct.
enterprise realizes that there are 2 oyster ponds in Falmouth. And this is that one and not the one that empties into Vineyard Sound.
Correct. Yeah.
And I assume there's
Good
no
distinction.
TMDL for this oyster pond, right?
There is not a TMDL for the Sibuoshit Marsh. Ed?
A couple of questions.
Actually, just for your benefit, Josh, Steve, just introduce yourself a little bit, like your background, so that he knows you.
I'm a member of this committee, obviously, and an engineer, and a member of the board of the other oyster ponds environmental trust.
Right. Pleased to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Look forward to working with you.
Introduce yourself and then ask.
Hi, Ed Jalowik. We met at the Little Pond grand opening ceremony
Yep.
back in June. and,
Nice to see you
good to see you again. And appreciate you coming to the committee. Couple of questions. Any idea, timing of when you might see funding, when you would get permits, A, and then funding sources to actually implement, and what's the estimated cost? I think I had seen figures, 2 or 3 million, is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the construction costs would be yet, but right now they're looking to go into permitting within the next couple of months. And then I'm not sure exactly what the timeline would be after that, but permitting, of course, takes quite a while. So it wouldn't be, construction wouldn't be for a ways out yet, 1 to 2 years, I would say. That's just an off-the-cuff
Yeah,
figure,
any
though.
particular funding sources that the group is looking at to try and, I understand they did have at one point a grant that got frozen or defunded from the federal level. Are they looking at some other sources to try and move that forward, or?
They're considering a number of state grants, and right now, actually, the money that is bringing the project forward at the moment is federal money, is the NOAA Transformational Habitat Grant.
The one last question, and then I'll let somebody else ask some. Inland side of the bike path and where this culvert is, the flow is pretty good at tidal change
Yeah.
in both directions. And seems one of the things I see that kind of inhibits the flow is the shoaling on the inland side. Is there plan to dredge some of that out also and clean it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as you've seen it right now, there's a scour hole on the inland side where on the incoming tide there's a back eddy that creates a lot of sediment deposition in that area. And so Fuss and O'Neill's new proposed design is actually to realign the culvert so that it is angled more on a, I guess, sort of northeast-south, or northwest-southeast axis. And actually, I've got this, which I can pass around here. But that should alleviate some of those shoaling issues that it experiences right now.
But would you actually go in and try to dredge some of what has accumulated there to,
I have a feeling that removal of sediment, would be part of the project, yeah. As they're trying to create a cofferdam around the new site, establish that, and then get rid of the old one.
thank you.
Ken?
Yeah, I don't really have any questions. Clear explanation of what's going on, so.
Thank you.
That's it. So Ken is one of our preeminent scientists here. He does a lot of water quality work for the town, for this committee, and he has thousands of students that are willing to go out there and take samples
I don't know
for him.
about that.
He regularly gets his students involved in projects.
Yeah.
Right? Nice to meet
John
you.
Waterbury, senior scientist in the town of Falmouth. No questions, John?
No, retired microbiologist.
Recovering microbiologist. Josh, a couple things. Well, I'm active, obviously, on this committee and on the town shellfish committee, and also active with the 300 committee. I'm sort of, I guess, almost overcommitted. But we met doing the fencing along Surf Drive for the late hatch
Yes.
of
Yep.
plovers, if you
I remember
remember.
that.
Yeah. We've done this experiment before, because I'm going to invent a new geomorphological term, path-locked wetlands, that Ducks Unlimited and some other groups funded before. Remember the little small landlocked or path-locked, almost freshwater that were being overtaken by Phragmites? And I wondered, is there something about Phragmites to it around Oyster Pond too, maybe the very upper reaches where there's enough fresh water coming in that, but I don't know what's happened in these other sections either.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with the Ducks Unlimited project that you're referring to, because that's
Yeah.
the culvert immediately to the south of the
Right.
one at Oyster Pond here. I think Phragmites tends to thrive in this area of Oyster Pond because it's got a lot of freshwater inputs
Yes.
as storm water comes off of 28A. And there may be other, freshwater lenses right underneath as well that tend to help it too. But I'm not sure about that. But I'm sure that the fresh water coming in sheet flows off the road there is probably one of the main
A lot of
culprits.
groundwater too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't seen any follow-up on the Ducks Unlimited project and wondered whether Phragmites had been pushed back a little bit or what had happened, because it's very intolerant, I think, of salt.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the status of things post-construction and how
Right.
it's kind of fared since then with monitoring and other restoration efforts. But that's a good question.
Yeah.
John,
No questions.
introduce yourself though.
Oh, yeah, I'm the newest member of the committee, the youngest member of the committee,
Rub it in.
maybe the least knowledgeable member of the committee,
Can you speak up?
and I'm a geologist by training.
Got a great skill set on this committee.
Is it a town project?
It's a collaborative
Yeah,
project.
but the town is ultimately responsible for the project, is that correct?
I would say that the town,
If you hire-
the town is a collaborative partner that is providing oversight and direction.
You hired Fuss and O'Neill, the Association for the Preservation of Cape Cod did not, right?
Well, they hold the grant, so
They do hold the grant.
they do, yeah.
They are the contracted entity, okay, interesting. All right, one last thing, Kristen maintains a list of folks that get to see our agenda via email. Would you like to get on that list?
Yeah, sure.
That'd be,
great.
yeah, terrific. Thank you for showing up, thank you for introducing yourself.
Anytime. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank
Nice to
you.
meet you all.
Great,
Pleasure.
thank you.
Next item is, I'm a little remiss, At the last meeting, Tom handed me a thing that says that he's still on the board, he got reappointed. Yeah, you got reappointed, I probably should have noted that
Without my permission, I suppose.
he's here till 2028, so,
Yeah.
You weren't there to complain?
I haven't seen a slip from Steve lately. If he did, he's gotta hand it to me.
Yeah, I got the same thing.
You gotta give it to me. I gotta get a copy, I don't know,
Oh, okay.
okay, you got it to do now. Apparently I'm supposed to have these in case I ever get audited, I don't know. All right, moving along. Next item on our agenda is the USGS report on groundwater impact. I actually have 2 extra copies of them here, if anybody wants to have it. Yeah, okay. I apologize now for any typos, I'm an engineer. So this is a presentation of the USGS report on the impact of an outfall in the Sagamore Lens. Quick background, a little bit around a year ago, contracted with the USGS. They are not an advocacy agency, they're a science-based agency. They developed this report following a certain protocol, which I'll sort of walk through briefly. And then they had it peer reviewed. So there was a draft of this out. John Waterbury and I saw it because we've been kind of monitoring this with them. I'd say, 3 or 4 months ago, John, there was a draft. And a week or so ago, it came out in final. And there were no surprises in the report. It was much as we expected. So the report simulates the steady state response for 2 sewering options. The first one is to sewer all parcels below Route 28. It's similar to our current Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, but it encompasses a slightly larger area, including portions that are currently not sewered, or not planned to be sewered, just because of the density of some of the downtown areas and the likelihood that they'll get sewered in the future. And the second one was to establish a boundary condition. If the town was to go out and sewer the entire town, what would happen? The report basically looks at the impacts on the contours of the Sagamore Lens. For those of you that know what the Sagamore Lens is, this will be redundant, but the Cape is a sole source aquifer. It's a series of lens going down the Cape. The largest one is the Sagamore Lens, and that encompasses the area between Mass Bay, Buzzards Bay, and Vineyard Sound, and extends across Sandwich, Mashpee, and a portion of Barnstable. As I noted before, the report was peer-reviewed and is now public. It's available at the town webpage. You can search under the phrase simulated hydrologic responses, or if you're really good and can copy this down fast, that's the path. So, the way they approach this is, they've looked at 4 different timelines, 2 different timelines and 2 different scenarios. In the upper left-hand corner, the pink area is where the sewers were in the year 2010, which is the last time they looked at sort of the overall groundwaters and contours and everything else. In the upper right-hand corner, the pink areas get larger because the town has now, since then, through 2023, has added a number of sewer areas, primarily Mara Vista, but also the high school area as well. The first step they did in this is they looked at parcels and water data and everything else to try to take their model from 2010 and update it to 2023. In other words, with these other areas sewered and other things going on and water use and development, what does the aquifer look like? And so then, as I noted already, they had 2 different scenarios. The first one is in the lower left, and you can see they've drawn an area below Route 28, including portions down through Walker Street and all the way up to Sitter's Pond. And then they looked at, in the second one, the entire town. So, they wind up in the report having a series of maps, and the maps have circles and numbers on them. What does this all mean? So this is the map showing what happened to the groundwater from 2010 to 2023. So if you look in the upper, I'm trying to pointer, but the biggest thing to note here is that the West Falmouth wastewater treatment plant has created a mound on the Sagamore lens between 2010 and 2023. At the treatment plant, that mound is a little bit over 1.1 feet. As it spreads out going towards West Falmouth Harbor and towards Mayor's Pond and whatnot, it drops down to a 0.1 foot mounding effect. If you look at this map for a little bit, you can see where there's a wastewater treatment facility out on Pompanesett. There's a couple of circles there. You can also see the impact of the Upper Cape Regional Water Supply, which is a negative number because they're pumping water out of that portion of the aquifer now. So, I'm going to show you the map for the changes with option 1. I'm not going to show you the map for changes with option 2. You can go to the report and read that if you want to. However, if you look at this closely here, what you see is that the mound at the wastewater treatment plant goes away. The way they show this in the report, they show the change. They don't show a negative number. They show that over time, 0.9 to 0.1 feet change will happen around the West Falmouth treatment plant. So we'll go back to sort of the 2010 conditions, if you will, from where we are now. The 0.1 foot line of change in the aquifer does extend across towards the east and cuts across the top of the peninsulas, where the rivers, the Coonamessett and the Child River, cut down through. These are two maps, one for condition 1, sewers below Route 28, and one for the sewers of the entire town. The one on the left shows the contours of the lens, and you have to study this closely to realize that there's some little blue lines that, you know, the 8-foot contour of the lens is now going to be 7.9, not 8. Interestingly, when they sewered the entire town, although the impact is more noticeable, it's far from catastrophic. So, again, if you're interested in this, I ask you to get the report and read it. I think it's fairly well written. John, you agree it's fairly well written now. So, the other thing is, what are the stream flow impacts? And I apologize that when I cut and paste, I get a very small table on the left here. But again, they looked at 6 brooks: the Coonamessett, the Bacchus, the Bourne, the Childs, the Quashneck, and the Red Brook. They're listed alphabetically, not east to west, not west to east. For the Coonamessett River, on average, the flow in the river will be 0.1 feet lower because of the water being diverted off to the outfall. For the Childs River, because it's further away, it's almost unmeasurable. It's 0.03 feet. And if you add up all of the total changes in stream flow on that table on the right, what it shows is that the current average simulated stream flow is 45.6. It will drop to 45.3, which is a 0.7% change. So, this is the important statement. In the USGS summary, it states, overall, the simulated hydrologic response of water table altitudes and stream flow in both scenarios was relatively small when compared to fluctuations that occur as a result of variations in natural recharge. I think we started a couple of years ago, John, with looking at the amount of recharge into the lens. You used to compare the water rushing out the Coonamessett and say, well, what the wastewater is wouldn't even be a fraction of that over time. And this substantiates that initial understanding. This report is an appendices to our ENF. A copy was distributed today to the Association for the Preservation of Cape Cod, as well as to the Buzzards Bay Coalition. And we have a couple of other folks that we will send it to over the next day or so. One of the questions that's open, and I'm not putting this on you, Doug, but to the extent that the selectmen want to hear more about any of this, Amy is willing to put herself on the agenda. So, I didn't write the report, so I'm not going to be able to answer every question that comes up, but at least in my view of how we are with getting an outfall in place, we knew there were a lot of permitting steps, things having to do with Army Corps of Engineers, geological information, a lot of things. And in my mind, the one thing that could always force us back to land-based discharge would be if we're impacting the aquifer. And this report is very scientific, very rigorous, and affirms that we are not going to ruin the aquifer or degrade it by putting an outfall in, whether it's 2 MGD or 3 MGD. Comments, questions? I'll go Jonathan first.
I guess under the scenario too, where all of Falmouth is sewered, the stream flow change is about 5%. And I guess everybody's saying that's a relatively small value, but what's considered a large value that would start impacting, let's say, the salinity of Great Pond, where the Coonamessett feeds into? What numbers do we start getting concerned about? Because I don't have a good feel for that.
Yeah, that's a great question. If you can email that off to me and Amy as in response to this. We are in communication with USGS, and they've looked at some of the stuff about saltwater and freshwater, and I think we can get an answer.
Steve, I think if you look at the annual flow through the Coonamessett River, at its peak, it's 9 million gallons a day, and in the summer it will drop to about 3 million gallons a day. And there's a huge amount of interannual variation. So if you look at the head of the Sagamore lens, it can have a head of 65 feet up at the peak. And that can vary as much as 10 feet in any given year. So there's a huge range of groundwater flows that are coming through that system.
So basically, you're saying that a 5-foot is not to worry about, but if there was a 30-foot change, something.
30% change?
Yeah, 5%, 30.
Yeah.
Then you start changing the salinities and have a real problem. We're nowhere near that in a worst-case scenario.
No.
And we're not about to sewer all of Falmouth.
Don't go away.
I'm going to sit down. I can answer the questions for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess the concern about saltwater intrusion to Long Pond is more going to be a function of where does sea level go over time. As the pond only sits 6 or 7 feet above sea level.
Others.
Go ahead.
Well,
No, you copy on the way by.
all right. Well, first, I thought it was a really excellent report. The biggest change, though, is in the area of the wastewater plant, and that feeds groundwater down into West Falmouth Harbor. And you can see high rates of groundwater flow along the shore of West Falmouth Harbor. There's both springs and also in Massapequa Creek. So they talk about the impact on the South Coast estuaries and rivers. They don't really talk about Massapequa Creek or West Falmouth Harbor. Decline in freshwater input to West Falmouth Harbor might actually be a positive thing, since that's carrying nitrogen into the harbor. So I wonder if maybe they could, I mean, I realize this is the final version, right? But
Yes.
could there be any addenda or anything that addresses that issue?
I guess, as I read the report, I saw that over time, we've artificially added water.
Right.
And now we're going back to the 2010, or the more historical flow of water to West Falmouth Harbor.
You don't think there was mounding in 2010?
If there was, it was very small, okay?
because,
In 2010, the flows were about 180,000 max, they're now 500,000
right,
max.
right. But the town has a nice record. So this is all modeled, right?
Yeah.
The town has a network of up-gradient wells all around the spray irrigation site and down gradient from the plant, which there's lots of information on throughout the 90s on the water table levels. And we did some analysis of that, and we saw mounding, measurable mounding, back even in those days. So, you know, if there's any way to get a little information on that in here, it would be great. But it doesn't bear on the question of whether we're going to get saltwater intrusion or any of that. It's you know, I mean, one key number in here that I saw was the total water withdrawal is 7%, I think is what they said, of annual recharge. So,
That's 7% for the whole, for scenario
That was
2.
if you sewered the entire town.
well, that's what we use in water annually,
Oh, our withdrawal, yeah,
our withdrawal. That's what we use.
we withdraw 7%,
Right.
but we put it all back in.
We put most of it back. I think it's more like 80%, right? There's 20% consumptive use or evapotranspiration or whatever. So that we wouldn't be putting that back under the full scenario, and under the partial scenario, you know, as you said, it's a much smaller number that is being diverted from recharge, but I think where you might see some interesting effects is in the freshwater flow into West Falmouth Harbor.
Yeah. Steve, can I say
Yeah, Tom, you're next.
about that? If I remember right, is it 1.7 foot decrease in the height of the hump? Is
Yes.
that right? 1.7 feet, and right now it's about 50 feet above sea level, is that right, probably, at the top? I forget what the contours are, but it's in that
It's in that range.
range, so it should be pretty easy to figure out, if you reduce the hydraulic head by 1.7
Right.
feet, what the change at sea level should be, assuming conditions there are constant. I think they could very easily tell you right away what the change might be. I think it's gonna be small. Initially, I was thinking it was gonna be a much bigger deal because it was gonna delay the arrival of the final dribs and drabs of moderate nitrogen groundwater to the harbor. But I think by the time this gets done, which is like 5 or 6 or 7 years from now, most of that, I hesitate to call it high nitrogen groundwater, but it's higher than normal, will already presumably be flushed out of the system and made its way to the harbor, I'm guessing. So it may not have any real effect on the harbor compared to what's happening already.
No, I think, excellent report, extremely detailed. You know, my eyes were bleeding after 2 readings through it, but this is great news. This is so
Yeah.
significant. A couple of years ago, when I first got on this committee, and before that, when people from the committee were talking about the potential for the outfall, this was a deal breaker. If this report went the other way, the concept was dead. And I think this is a major milestone, and I certainly appreciate the impact it has on our ability to hopefully go forward with the permitting and eventual construction of the outfall. So this is great news. I think it's very thorough. They could have done a lot more stuff into things like that Ken and Tom are referencing, but this is a final report. This is into the record, and it's a great step for us to move forward with the much-needed outfall. So, great.
I'm more than willing to collect any comments like you have. Ken, just put it, email me. I'll talk with Amy. I think there should be an opportunity at some point, you know, in this whole process that's going to last for another year and a half, be able to go back and say, a couple of questions came up. Is it easy to answer by looking at the model? Okay? We'll get an answer one way or another.
Okay.
Steve,
Yes, John?
would you mind putting the slide up that had the major contours?
Is that the one you want, John?
No, the one before that.
That's the change with option
Yes.
one.
So you see what's really happening there is we're reverting the mound at the treatment plant to pre-treatment plant conditions.
Right.
And if you notice, then we have loss of mounding on the peninsulas. And that's because we're removing 20% of the fresh water recharge from each of those peninsulas as we sewer, because that 20% is not going into septic systems. So those are the areas where you have the greatest impact, because we're really reversing what we're doing in those major areas. But otherwise, it's having, in my reading and having followed this for a long time, it's having absolutely minimal impacts on the overall recharge characteristics of the aquifer.
That's for sure.
Comments?
Hi, Doug Brown, Select Board. I can't wait to get back to my board members and share the good news. This is very exciting, so I'm pretty happy. And I think Ken's got an interesting point about there's going to be several more years of flow still going to West Falmouth. I thought your report a couple of months ago about the potential for a permeable reactive barrier at the point where that was entering was really good and interesting. Is any more work happening with regard to that?
Yeah,
Defer to Kristen.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll
go
go for
ahead.
everybody, but
Okay.
I sort of touched upon that, Doug, earlier, that we've been basically told that our application's a good application. We have filled it out, we've indicated in-kind services from the DPW to meet the grant requirements, and now we're just awaiting a final word from them on the status of that grant, but, you know, I don't want to say we have the grant yet, because we don't have the grant yet. Grant funding and money is a moving target these days. But all indications are that we have a good project, a project that they see value in. And Ken has done quite a bit of sort of groundwork with Isotech already.
Well,
And along with
Kristen,
Kristen's, you know, work on this, so that I think we're well positioned.
and yeah, and Isotech also. I mean, it was a three-person effort.
You know, I'm the person who's not the PRB expert, but I have learned that, you know, if there's a concentration of, in a certain location, a PRB might be a good solution. And the fact is, there's enough groundwater monitoring wells that there's a very definite flow from the wastewater plant to Snug Harbor. And how long was it? Was it 400 feet, 500 feet? Wasn't even that long.
It's 250 feet.
250 feet.
You know, if we could just put in a plug, if we do get the funding, the final funding, if we could get just a little bit more, we could make it a little longer. It would be nice to have it be more like 350 feet or something, but
My view always on this project has been that rather than wait for 15 or 20 years for everything to flush out, once we have an outfall in place, even though we've knocked down the concentration coming out of the treatment plant, we're still discharging nitrogen at 3. You know, this would help, you know, the permeable reactive barrier is probably going to have roughly a 20-year life. You'll have to get some, you know,
But
reinjection
it appears that the travel time from the disposal sites is on the order of a decade or more. So if you stop all the input tomorrow, you've still got 10 years for everything to flush out. If you stop everything 7 years from now, you've got 17 years.
And it seems like it's longer than we think over there.
Yeah.
The initial guesstimates turned out to be optimistic. But, yeah, this way here, you know, I refer to it as getting rid of the legacy.
Well, it's only 9 days until the warrant closes, so I don't know if we need more money. You better speak
Well,
up.
let's wait and see if we actually get this.
Right, so then it would have to be the following year.
Yeah.
Steve?
A comment in support of what Ken just said. Does the following make sense, that since Ken mentions it would be nice to have money to do more, that at least in the permitting and design, you get permitting for the longer length, and then maybe you only build 75% of it with the money you get, but you keep the permit.
Sure.
And understand you can do the other 25% later,
Yeah.
if
Like we're
and
doing
when
with-
you get the money.
Like we're doing with the outfall.
Yeah, I think that's
Permit
reasonable.
three.
That's a good suggestion.
We'll need the three.
You must be an engineer.
All right. Any other comments? Tom, I got you on target.
We're doing great. We're doing great. We may keep you on as chairman.
I doubt that.
We were going to surprise you with that.
Yeah, I bet you were. Steve, you're the next item, right?
If you say so.
Well, you asked to have a discussion on best available nitrogen-reducing technology for septic systems.
This is an abbreviated version of what was sent out in the email. Actually, Kristen sent this out today, but you might not have gotten it.
Did you get one, John?
I've got it digitally, I don't need another hard copy.
If you want a hard copy, or maybe you already have it.
I've got it.
Everybody has it, okay. The one that was sent out initially, half or two-thirds of that was solved very neatly when Steve Rafferty showed me the Title V definition of best available nitrogen-reducing technology. And it's any system that achieves 10 milligrams nitrogen per liter or less. So that's very clear, and I needn't have worried about how you handle other imagined systems that could be on the margin with different price tags. But I still think there should be a discussion of this with respect to urine diverting systems, if and when they get through the pilot stage. And if they're declared equal to other BANRT IAs, then there's no problem at all. They're just another IA. If you like that sort of thing and you want to save money, you'll get one. The planning process doesn't need to know how many of each will be chosen, since they would all meet BANRT. I personally think this is unlikely to happen, but it would be wonderful if it did, and it's out of our control. The tough case that requires thinking about is if they're found to remove nitrogen, but not enough for DEP to declare them as best available nitrogen-reducing technology. And let's assume that the performance is significant enough that they can't be ignored, or that the difference can't be ignored, but that there is substantial nitrogen removal. Then how do you regulate them? How do you work them into a watershed plan? And I'm just interested in hearing everybody's comment on that, because it involves fairness to the people that want UDs and fairness to the people that don't want them and are spending more on something that actually does meet the BANRT. How do you handle the people that want to save money by not pulling their full share?
What's P&L, right? AP or-
Excuse me. Usually we take comments from.
But that's a reasonable
Best available
question.
nitrogen reduction technology. Best available nitrogen reduction technology.
It's a term used to distinguish IAs that actually work well enough to be interesting and bad ones that are out there on the market. In other words, you can't put in a cheapo one and pretend that it's removing nitrogen. It has to actually work and work quite well. There are two of those on the market now, or soon will be.
Two of them in provisional status.
Provisional status, that are like,
Well, but they
will
make-
presumably get general as soon as they get enough units installed.
They have enough units installed, they just wait for the clock to.
Oh,
run out.
okay.
All right, Tom?
Yeah, I think the thing that we really need to think about here is the nature of the monitoring program. They're gonna have to be monitored, whether it's quarterly or whatever the case might be, and I think you have to say to the homeowner, if you want your UD thing to qualify for best available status, this is the standard you have to meet, and if you can't meet it, say, the first 6 months, first 2 sampling periods, you've got to have a more rigorous urine diversion program.
Yes, but I'm making the assumption that the pilot program finds that even if you install a good American standard of the company,
Right,
urine diverting toilet in every toilet in your house,
right.
that's, in general, it doesn't meet the 10 milligram standard at
Right.
your septic tank.
Steve, can you hypothesize a value? Do you think it makes 14?
Well,
I don't know. Let's say that it, let's say, okay, sure, let's say it meets 14.
Okay, I want to have some.
so, yeah, but I'm,
Well, I've done the calculations, so.
yeah, I mean, urine diversion, I mean, that's where the vast majority of the nitrogen is, in the waste stream,
Yeah.
right? And if you're diverting the urine, even, I don't know, 50% of it or something, I think you're going to get a pretty good number. It's just that you have to be consistent, and I think you have to put the burden on the homeowner who's asking for what amounts to special, cheaper pathways to meeting the mandated standards, that you're either going to have to put in more toilets or make sure that people aren't subverting the system somehow.
So you're saying that with, correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, I'd have to
I'm
see
going to give
John.
I'm going to give Jonathan the floor, because he's going to.
I just want to put a little quantification in there, because I've done some calculations using some of the values that are out there in literature in terms of how much urine comes out of a typical person. What's the, the population of Falmouth and single-family residents? It's 2.27 on average. What's the concentration of urine? 8,000 milligrams per liter. When you start doing that, you realize that for a person who's doing 100% utilization of urine diversion, they're pulling out the equivalent of 8.25 kilograms per year of nitrogen. Now, maybe that's optimistic that people aren't going to be that rigorous, but even if they're only doing half of that, they're still pulling out 4 kilograms per year of nitrogen per household under that scenario of measuring the amount of the fluid that's coming out, not using any relationship to how much water is being used, but just purely the tank urine and the values they've got for people. The number is significant.
I'm going to just give you a slight caveat on that. So what the DEP has referred to different things meeting certain values, they always take into account that there's some attenuation of nitrogen in the ground on its way to the estuary. So in conversations I've had with Mass Tech around this, they agree that in the final number, the DEP or Mass Tech or somebody's going to say, yeah, we're removing 4.2 at this location. That's equivalent to 2.5 or 3. Just stay with your 4 number for now, okay? At the estuary. That still doesn't change the fact that
It's still a significant number,
nitrogen
but if you're
rate.
measuring performance in the tank, and the person,
Yep.
the homeowner is actually trying to rigorously follow the usage of this urine diversion system, you'll show a large number of urine being, or nitrogen being removed. I understand the DEP calculation, and Kristen educated me on how there's probably going to be some sort of fractional number that's used of that 8 kilogram, but it's a significant amount of nitrogen.
But have you carried the calculation further to get, I grant you that that's a wonderful way to calculate it, and in many ways it makes more sense than what DEP does.
Right.
But we have to follow the DEP rules. What happens to the numbers if you mix that with typical household water flows? What do you get in terms of milligrams per liter?
I want to give the select.
Hi, Doug Brown, Select Board again. So it's my understanding, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that what they've done is change the whole dynamic of, we're not going to do the study now. They've decided that they're going to delegate the responsibility for keeping track of the urine that's collected to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And so you're going to have septage haulers that are going to go to each location, and they're going to keep a book of where they go and how much stuff they remove, and that's going to be logged in, and we're going to get a credit for the aggregate amount of urine that's diverted. But what I see as a problem for the plan of what's coming out of the state leadership is that they're still insisting that these things will be deployed in nitrogen-sensitive areas as defined in the Mass Estuaries project. So, which is counterintuitive, because we don't really want to stick urine diversion in the sewer plant areas, because then what are we going to do? Now we're only hurting ourselves of meeting the TMDL, because on the other hand, they're also not requiring that all units in the house be converted. They're saying, do one if you want, let's see what you get. And so I see a real problem with the way the state is handing it back to us. So I wonder if you guys will take that up and come up with a better plan.
So, there is a urine diversion working group, liaison, what is it called?
Liaison group, UDO.
Liaison group. And that's through the Mass Tech, Peter Johnson Staub is
Yep.
our point person. Steve's on that. They're the folks that are working out, what's the agreement gonna look at, like, what's the requirements, one bathroom, all bathrooms, things like that.
Yeah.
So, we're a little bit out of it, but Steve, because he's on it, got into this,
Let me respond to,
you know.
everything you said, Doug, is correct, except I'm looking past the pilot project. You're right, there are some hurdles some problems we have to solve with it, making that relevant. But I'm looking past that to an imagined, projected, permanent implementation of this after the pilot project. When we have the data from the pilot project and we know whether they've been approved as best available nitrogen-reducing technology or not.
I thought that was out the window. I thought we were
No.
doing the project.
No, so that's the
Did I
first thing you said.
misunderstand
I don't think that's correct, unless something's changed, right? Brian, Mass Alternative Septic System Test Center and Brian Horsley are funded, as I understand it,
25.
by the state to do a study on 25 households.
Well, we just.
Yes, Brian says it's yet to be determined. You're
Okay.
correct that DEP has said, forget using it as BANRT. Just measure it the way you said and take credit.
Yeah.
And I wanted to move this discussion to how you take the credit, because I think that is still problematical, but I don't want to jump there prematurely. But Brian still has hopes that it might be approved as BANRT.
Right.
If it is, it's unlikely, but it's wonderful. It simplifies it. It's just as good as an IA.
Right.
You don't need Jonathan's excellent calculation. It's, by definition, DEP has, in that scenario, which I don't think will happen, but I'm not ruling it out.
How do you know?
By definition, that's what that scenario is, that it's approved as a BANRT. The interesting case is, what do we do if it's not?
And the other problem is, what if we do with all the ones that we deploy in the sewer planning areas?
Well,
Oh, but that's,
you wouldn't put them there.
But that's where they're headed right now, because that's the nitrogen-sensitive area as defined in the estuaries project.
Brian claims not to be worried about that. He only
Okay.
needs 25 people.
All right.
Right now.
And I see that, quite frankly, as the job of the proponents, the avid, well-known proponents in this community who think that everybody and their brother is going to go for this technology. The least they can do is find 25 people outside the sewer area to volunteer, given a subsidy. If they
Right.
can't do that, it's hard to predict that a substantial, meaningful number of people in the town would want it.
So you think it's still possible for people outside of the designated nitrogen-sensitive areas to participate in the study? Because I got the other,
There's plenty of nitrogen-sensitive areas that aren't sewer areas.
The IA geoboundary.
Right,
That's what we should
the
target.
watershed, those geoboundaries that,
It's the IA
I want to
geoboundary.
try to control this conversation.
okay.
All right? My sense, Doug, is that they are focused on finding 25 homes inside nitrogen-sensitive areas.
Outside the sewer planning area.
Outside the sewer plant area,
That would be great.
okay? Because, Kristen, you sent some information back and
Yep.
forth. So there were 4 homes, I think, that we getting excluded because of the way they fell. So
Okay.
they're trying to narrow that down. I just want to touch on a kind of a key point here between best available control technology in IA systems, and nitrogen reduction. So the DEP has said, if you raise oysters, we will give you credit for nitrogen reduction based upon measuring the weight. Okay? They have said, if you reduce the amount of fertilizer, we'll give you credit for the amount of fertilizer. Orleans has reduced a ton of fertilizer on a couple of golf courses. So it's a measurement. I look at urine diversion, right now, if you have put an IA system in, it gets permitted by the Board of Health here. You gotta measure 4 times a year, and it's operating where it needs to operate. I would hope that urine diversion's gonna say, you gotta measure what you take out, and you gotta measure the concentration of the nitrogen in there, and do the math and say, we just removed, so it's a nitrogen reduction technology. Get into IA and how it fits in with waivers, if you go down that path before you have to do the next step, where people are still wrestling with.
Okay.
Right.
Sounds good.
Did I misstate anything?
Well, that's true. The philosophical, legal, political problem that still remains is that you cannot predict that amount. Again, I'm jumping onto a permanent implementation. I'm not talking about the pilot project. I'm talking when you have a substantial number of people doing this. If you don't have a substantial number, why are we wasting all our time talking about it?
Right.
And in that case, Steve is right that you can measure, in fact, it's one of the neat things about urine diversion, is you have collected it in a tank instead of letting it go through the ground and measuring some arcane number. You've got the volume and you've got the concentration, so you know the kilograms of nitrogen. But now, how do you use that number? And what I was trying to get to with John was, given that 4 kilograms or 8 kilograms we're talking about, with given water flow, what is that equivalent to? I mean, how do we compare that to the IA 10 milligrams per liter? Do you know the answer?
I didn't do that calculation, I was
Okay.
just looking on the
But that
volume
way
per
we'd
year.
be comparing in the same units.
But, what I'm comparing it to is for an IA or a sewer system, we assign 2.7 and 4.4, let's say, for Great Pond, kilograms per year per single-family residence. What I'm saying is, for single-family residence that uses 100% urine diversion, the number is larger.
Okay.
Ken?
Yeah, so, a couple of questions, actually. So, if in a typical installation where someone might put in a UD, they're still going to have a septic system for solid waste, right?
Right.
And for gray water and everything else.
right.
So I would presume that the basic amount of water used is the same, but you're not putting in that 9 or 8 kilograms per year of nitrogen, right? That's a smaller volume that's going off in concentrated form in urine somewhere else. So, I think if these fixtures, whatever they are diverting all the waste that isn't urine into the standard septic tank, you will see a very substantial decline in the concentration. And if the criteria, which I believe is the way it's done, is you look in the D box and you see what's the concentration in the liquor coming off the septic
Right, and
tank.
that's going to be done in the pilot study.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's proposed that it would be done in a permanent implementation.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm kind of optimistic that it will look quite good.
Right,
We can, it's not hard to do a spreadsheet calculation of that if you look at,
And John just actually did answer my question by saying it's more. That's all I need to know. In other words, you're predicting.
If it's 100%, now if you start using other toilets that are just taking the urine into a standard septic system, then it's going to be less. It's the percentage of that
Yeah.
urine
No,
that's
I think
captured.
it's fair to assume that if you were telling the town you're not going to spend $30,000 or $40,000 on an IA, like all your neighbors are going to be doing, that you'd better put in all toilets. Not for the pilot project, but for permanent implementation. Because otherwise, you could clearly cheat.
right.
don't use the word cheat. That's an opinion, and again, the committee you're on is working out those rules.
But I think Steve's point, if I understand correctly, is,
You're next.
so if it then qualifies as best available nitrogen removing technology, after the analysis is done, we're golden, because
Right.
there'll be a strong incentive for people to do this, because they will save tens of thousands of dollars.
It would
By
even be in
doing
the
it this
town's
way.
interest to pay them more,
Right.
because you're getting more benefit.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily
We're
have,
having a three-way conversation.
but if it doesn't qualify,
That's the interesting case.
then you still have something that's beneficial, but there's no incentive to do it, because if you're inside of a geo boundary where you're required to upgrade your septic system, unless you can get credit for it, you're still going to be forced to use best available nitrogen removing
That's right.
Okay.
And if you're not there, why would you do anything?
Ed's next. I do want to say one
Right,
thing.
exactly.
I
So,
think, John, you.
so just to make the final point, I think, Steve, what you're asking is, should we be thinking about a way to exempt people who do this from the IA requirement, if it turns out that it's in that intermediate category?
I'm trying not to be biased. I'm just saying in principle, there's a philosophical, legal, political, economic problem that we should be thinking about. I'm not proposing any particular solution, except that it should be fair and make sense technically.
I want to, Jonathan has touched up on something through his calculations that you need to understand. Jonathan's saying if 100% of the home, 100% of the toilets are urine diversion in the property, it has a high probability
Yeah.
of achieving, the 10 milligrams per liter criteria. If it's only one of two, it may start to slip off.
It's still a big number.
Yeah.
Taking half of 8 is 4.
The point is, some people can make it that number if they do certain things, and other people won't make it, and it's gonna have to shake out. Ed was next. Ed's been begging me to speak, then you're next, John, okay?
A couple of points. One is just, from basic biology and physics, only 80% of the human excreted nitrogen is in the urine.
Right.
So minimum 20% of your nitrogen is going out in solids. And you're not going to get 100% of the urine, even if you do all the toilets to a urine diverting device, because some people accidentally or intentionally might mix a little urine in when they take a shower. They might excrete from both solids and liquids simultaneously, so when you flush, it's all going to the septic system, so all that urine is going elsewhere. It's not going into the collection tank. So if you start off with a value and
Or they're at work or at school,
well,
so there's somebody else, they're traveling or whatever.
well, that's kind of irrelevant at this point, because we're talking about the numbers that DEP currently uses. And the most you're going to get, if you're only getting 80% of the nitrogen maximum, you're not going to get to 10 milligrams per liter. You will not get there. Now, one of the things that have been said over the years that you just can't. You're only getting 20% of that nitrogen that a person excrete at a minimum is going elsewhere. So you're not going to get at your D box testing 10 milligrams per liter. You're not going to be a best available nitrogen reduction technology. The DEP assigns an arbitrary number to a single-family home. If you sewer, they give you credit towards your TMDL. If I can ask Kristen, what is that number they give us when we sewer a house?
It's dependent on water use.
Okay, but in average aggregate
For Falmouth, average, it's about 4 to 4.5 for a
kilograms.
single-family house.
Now-
But
You may be able to get, by collecting the urine, more than that. And you'd say, well, geez, why sewer at all? Just collect all the urine. Except the big question is, what credit will DEP give for that kilogram? Will it be 1 kilogram of credit for every kilogram collected? I'd be awful surprised, because they would have to change all of their metrics and give a whole different way of determining credits towards TMDL. The other thing that would have to happen, just talk the financial stuff, currently, the only thing that's eligible for the state tax credit would be a mandated sewer connection or a mandated IA. So unless the urine diversion technology is accepted as a IA best available technology, you won't be eligible for that tax credit. And yet, back over a year ago when we had a urine diversion working group that Doug was part of, Tom, myself, and a few others, we did some estimating and said it's going to cost about 10 grand to do a full-blown 100% all toilets urine diversion between the tank, the plumbing, and everything else. And this was based on some pretty good info from tradesmen and from the industry, what it would cost to do urine diversion. And if you're not getting any credit for that under the state tax credit, that's all out-of-pocket cost.
It might still be small compared to an IA.
An
with a credit.
IA is eligible for 60% of the cost of the IA. And if that's 30,000, just to pick a number, you'll get an $18,000 credit. That 30 has been reduced by 18. You're getting a lot closer to that $10,000 minimum to do a urine diversion. So the benefit of doing that for a homeowner that might have just bought a piece of land for $500,000 and tore down the shack that was on it and puts up his $1 million construction cost mansion, I don't think a lot of folks are going to want to mess around with urine diversion to the tune of, well, IA is this and urine diversion's that. Yeah, I'm going with a more proven technology, more conventional use of toilets and everything else, because they're going to look at resale value and the next generation that might inherit that property. So I think it's going to be a hard sell on that basis. It's a worthwhile project just to start and develop this data that people have been clamoring for. The data already exists out there in the world, though, but we can do this project for state funds administered by MassTech. It is not a town project, it's a collaboration with MassTech. This committee's really not involved except to be kept abreast of it. Okay, go ahead and try it, but I think social acceptance and proven performance and getting that DEP decree or ruling of how much credit you could possibly get is going to be a hard sell. That all being said, your request tonight was to talk about what would our policy be? How would this fit in with our wastewater planning going forward? That's the important question.
Right.
That's assuming a whole bunch of things happen, and
I'm not asking for a vote on anything.
right.
And I mean, I don't see the point in this discussion of addressing whether it will happen or not.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is that it might happen, and I want to be ready for an appropriate plan to handle it.
You're reiterating yourself, John.
I just wanted to go back to the basic problem has been DEP has never allowed us to figure the mass balance. They refuse to do that.
Right.
And they have set up, the IAs were set up for zone 2s. And they calculated that the output from a septic system was 35 milligrams per liter. And that's where they got the 19 that you had to achieve. The IAs were never set up in those zones to be nitrogen removal systems. And George Horfeller has fought with them for years to figure out if you use mass balance. So we now know that 35 is not what's coming out of septic systems. It's 65 to 100 milligrams per liter. So if you're not using mass balance, you're just in gaga land.
And John, if you take 65 and use his number, the 20% still remains, you're at 13. So even if you put 100% urine diversion in, you're still pumping 13 out,
So
which is above the 10.
To Steve's discussion, I think, we're putting the horse before the cart. Let's see what this pilot program produces. And it isn't going to take us long, once we know what they've done, to figure out how we're going to approach it. I simply am not willing to agonize a whole lot about the option B at this point.
I don't want anyone to agonize, I just want to know if there are any creative ideas. I've heard a lot of ideas about why we shouldn't consider this at all, and I appreciate John's input that, in fact, I may be wrong that it's unlikely that it will reach Banner level. I heard John saying it's so much that even if you take Ed's 20% discount into account, you're still ahead of the game. But, and as far as the credit and the amount going through the ground, how do they handle PRBs and fertilizer now? Do they take the actual pounds of, I mean, fertilizer, you buy it by the pound, you know what you're not putting on.
I don't know how they're doing this on the links. I haven't gone to their report. They've done, they're at 5 years on Pleasant Bay. They've had to give a summary. I have not looked at that, Steve, but you could probably go online and find that and
Okay.
find out about fertilizer if you want to do that, okay? I want to try to wrap this up because I do want to try to move us out of here.
No,
Number 6.
I don't
Somebody's got
expect any more out of it.
something burning on this one. Okay. We're going to move into what's called reports of members and staff. This is not necessarily a report from me, but it is something that I want to make everybody on this committee aware of. The town of Wellfleet has a watershed permit at this point, and it is available online. So for those of you that may be interested in what, the Pleasant Bay one is kind of a little bit of an interesting one. I'm going to hold up a picture, I'm going to pass it around. But in their watershed plan, they have a picture like this. And one of the colors is where the sewers are going to go. The other color is places they're going to have to do IAs, okay? They had passed a regulation at the Board of Health, and on July 30th, the Board of Health met to review their regulation that existed, to look at changes they would likely make at it. I would strongly suggest if anybody has the time to go to the Wellfleet homepage, look up their plan, skim through it any way you want. I believe it's a good understanding of what a watershed plan will ultimately look like for us. You know, in their case, there's upwards of 5,000 parcels that are impacted. You know, and like I say, I just dropped an email off to the Board of Health Secretary yesterday asking what happened at July 30th and if there was any outcome or any whatever. But again, I'm sending this, every one of you can get one of these just to see, you know, we've put together what I would call, you know, concept plans, but they're not far off.
Not to be used for navigation
Not far
purposes.
off.
Let's monitor our geo-boundaries.
You look at, you know, the hybrid watershed management strategy
Oh, it
overview.
says on it, draft for discussion only.
It's draft.
This has been submitted to the state, correct?
Yep, yeah, this plan is in with the state.
That was in the...
And in there, oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, but like I say, I had some time and I actually got to that, and
What's the solid dark blue line?
that's the watershed. It goes over 3 towns, okay?
So did they make everybody get IAs, or,
They can only do it for their town.
no, did they make everybody in their town get an IA that doesn't have a sewer?
Yes.
Well, no, there's some, there's.
No, there's
no,
I mean, are those
these are-
yellow areas golf courses,
I don't,
or are they just,
That's not sure.
are all the
Like the ones in the
actual
south are
houses?
developments.
read private sources.
They have a series of triggers that are more rigorous than what we're currently looking at. in Falmouth.
Their regulation is more rigorous, and they were in the process. They've also, if you'll recall, they got some SRF money. They provided some grants back to certain homeowners for the IA, and they're revisiting that whole grant program and how it goes about, with the idea of making it more applicable to need, rather than just first come, first served. So,
Is there,
the tough questions that we keep raising, they're in the midst of.
right, is there IA requirement, BNART?
Couldn't tell you off the top of my head. It has more to do with distance from water bodies, salt marshes,
Right.
other things like that, times of travel, okay?
Because, I mean, I think Steve's memo really does crystallize the UD issue perfectly. And the issue is B, case B.
Thank you.
Yeah. They've had to wrestle with, they've actually had a variance provision in the regulation they adopted. They've actually granted some variances, and they summarized the variances they've granted in the regulation. So that's what I have.
Okay.
Other board members have, you want to talk about shellfish?
No, we've got a meeting coming up next week, but I'm going to miss it because it's on the 3rd also. And that's what I wanted to bring up. Are we making a formal decision not to meet on the 3rd? Is that decided today?
All those in favor of not meeting on the 3rd signify by saying aye.
I think, does everybody understand why?
Yeah, because we're all going to the Board of Health.
Right, okay. I don't know if the rest of the public knows that.
Yeah.
But the
Steve, do we have
conflict
to
that was.
post that as if we're all going? Do we have to
Yes.
post that?
Yes, yes. So the Board of Health will meet at the Water Quality Management, hold on. The Water Quality Management Committee will be meeting on August 3rd, but they will be meeting at the Board of Health hearing.
Without an agenda of our own.
I want to check in with Scott McGann about the arrangements they've got, and if something is hot, for whatever reason, we could do like the selectmen do before a town meeting, we could meet.
Right, but I
10 minutes.
think it's important that we say we are not showing up with an agenda. The agenda is
Currently,
completely in the
there's no-
hands of the Board of Health.
The agenda, the agenda for the hearing is with the Board of Health.
Yes.
But because we are scheduled for a meeting, if we had one item that we had to vote on for any reason,
But it's physically at the senior center.
Yes.
physically at the senior center.
What
It's
time?
at the Surf
5:30.
Drive room, and which I don't know which room that is in the senior center. It's
Probably one
at
of the big ones on the
5:30.
left.
5:30.
It's 5:30 on Wednesday, September 3rd.
It's an antique.
It's already been posted in the Enterprise, so on Fridays. I'm sure it'll come up again this week.
Will there be some sort of prepackaged that'll be available to review, or?
I don't know.
What's that, the Board of Health reg?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was published in the Enterprise.
Well, yeah, it's published. All of the thing that they're going to talk about is
Okay.
already published
Yeah,
in
their
the,
agenda.
in the notice in the Enterprise.
Krista, will you just check in with Scott McGann, get a copy of the regulation for which they're holding a hearing on, and distribute it to the members of this board, please?
Yeah, good.
I think there's got, last time I saw it was version 11. Yeah, that's pretty small.
Yeah.
I need a magnifying glass to read that, I'm sorry.
I
I can't.
You don't have good glasses?
I don't have a magnifying glass. I think one of the kids borrowed it to prove they could stick grass on fire. Any other reports, meetings, or anything? You have to step to the microphone, Malcolm. And
Malcolm,
stay- And I always ask people to stay on topic.
Malcolm Donald, town meeting member. Yeah, I'd just like to challenge one of Ken Foreman's statements, saying that the water consumption of the urine diversion would be the same as an IA or a sewer. And I beg to differ with you that UD, urine diversion, will save 4,400 gallons of water per person. And I think that's particularly significant right now in this in this drought situation that we're having. If everybody were doing urine diversion, you'd be saving a heck of a lot of water. And then the second point I'd like to make is that the wastewater treatment plant, the sewers and IAs do not remove phosphorus.
You're off topic. You're off topic.
Okay.
Can I respond?
So you can. So you're saying that there's a 12-gallon per household per day reduction in water consumption?
Correct.
So if the average is 135, there's still 125. So Ken was technically wrong, there will be less water.
No, I wasn't wrong because I didn't say that I thought water consumption would be the same. I asked if water consumption would be the same, and if you assume water consumption, since the DEP standard for best available nitrogen technology is based on the concentration, not the mass flow. If the water consumption is lower, then there is no hope that UD will ever qualify as best available nitrogen technology because the amount of water into which the nitrogen is diluted will be less. So in order, I mean, I think it would be great if there was less water consumption, but it will make it very difficult for UD installations to qualify under DEP standards if their criteria is based on the concentration. If it was based on the mass of nitrogen, that would be great. But John's Waterbury's pointed out, there's no hope of getting them to change their standard on that. So, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. It doesn't make any sense, and it's, it's a political issue.
Right, but
Yeah.
the point is, in my opinion, in order to get people to adopt UD on any large scale, it has to qualify as an alternative to putting in a more expensive approved system like a nitro or a nitrex within these watersheds. And if you can't get that credit so that you don't have to do it, you don't have to put in this expensive system, very few people are going to put in UD fixtures, because they're already going to have to spend $50,000 or $60,000 to put in a nitro. That's exactly what Steve said in his memo. So that's where I was coming from. I was like, it was really a question is, do these UD fixtures, because we don't even know what they're going to look like, right? There is no approved.
We've had a long discussion about UD. We got to the end of it.
Right.
I failed to ask the audience if they wanted to speak. Thank you, Malcolm, for stepping up and raising the question, or getting the clarification. So it's 12 gallons less a day, in response to your question. Your
person.
Your diversion will be 12 gallons less a day.
Per person.
No, you gave a number. I divided it by 365.
Right, that's
Average water use in homes in the service area in Falmouth is 135.
Yep.
I took 12 off of the 135. That's where I got my numbers, okay? Average water use, not per person, per house.
It would be per person, though.
He's saying his number is per person. The number, I'm sorry. I think he was saying his numbers.
I'm assuming the number you're quoting presumes that you do not need water to flush the urine away.
Correct.
So I have a toilet that uses 1.2 gallons of water a day per flush, okay? So I'll try to work my way back to your number, but there's still, it's gonna be less water. It's gonna be less water. And that probably is the driving reason why we should go for urine diversion, to save water and not have to put any more wells into the town and save millions of dollars, right?
Right.
Okay, I got it, thank you.
And the drought,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay? I
Thank
entertain
you.
a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All right?
Yep.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.